Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years. They are still a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But I've also had some really nice West Coast and black IPAs from these guys as well. In recent times, they have been diversifying a bit more and doing more imperial stouts and fruited sours and things like that. So I'm sure we're going to see quite a wide variety of things from these guys going forward, which is always a good sign. But a very highly rated Japanese brewery, and one that I would recommend that you check out should you get the chance. And yeah, I'm quite excited to see what these guys produce in the future. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases at the time of filming, which is December 2024. It's a style that I have had from this brewery a couple of times before, and one that I know they can do really, really well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little bit north of me, up to the Tokyo area. We're going to go out to the west of the city to Yamanashi Prefecture, and to be specific, we're going to go to a little city called Hokuto, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Uchu Brewing. So this particular beer is called Ancient Frost. It comes in at 9.5% ABV, and this is a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, we've had a couple of these from Uchu Brewing over the years, and their stronger IPAs always tend to be pretty damn good. But this is a beer that I picked up at a little beer shop in Nagoya called Binge, somewhere that I really do recommend that you check out. They've got a great selection of Japanese stuff and some really interesting, quite random things from the US and other places as well. But yeah, always nice to return to Uchu Brewing. These guys are one of the Japanese breweries that I would highly recommend you check out should you get the chance. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. The Ancient Frost 9.5% New England Hazy Imperial Triple IPA from Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture here in Japan. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Uchu Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to quite regular at the moment because I'm over visiting my son and filming a few Japanese beers at night. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. And if you are particularly interested in Japanese beer, do make sure you check out my friend Neva over at Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. I'll put the link to his channel in the video description for you below. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Uchu Brewing once again then. So, Uchu Brewing, as I've told you before, was founded back in 2017 by Masahiro Kusunose and Rumiko Suzuki. So they both came from a background in agriculture, and they first encountered craft beer on the US West Coast, and when they were over there they found that they loved the different personalities that each brewery had, and they wanted to kind of bring some of this West Coast American craft beer culture back with them to Japan. So Masahiro was originally the main brewer, and Rumiko was doing the kind of marketing and business side of things, but she was also taking part in the brewing and farming activities as well. So the actual history of the Uchu company goes back to 2009, when they were founded under the name Space Farmers, if you want to translate it into English. Uchu, of course, means space in English. but or in Japanese, yeah, Uchu is the Japanese word for space. That's the best way to put it. But basically, they were growing rice and vegetables without pesticides, kind of an organic farming operation, if you like. And over the years, they just kind of expanded that. But in 2016, they planted some hops on their land, and they now have their own hop fields right next to the brewery. And often, they'll handpick some of the hops that go into the beers. And today they're running miso making and rice paddy workshops for anyone that wants to take part. But they raised over 3 million yen through crowdfunding, and they used this to build their own brewery in Hokuto in Yamanashi Prefecture, and much of the construction of the original facility was DIY. But they sold their first beers in 2018 and then expanded the brewery in 2021 with a second round of crowdfunding, this time raising over 17 million yen. The next year in 2022, they raised a further 12 million yen, and they used this to open their first tap room, which is called Roadside Station Kabuchisawa, and you'll find this about 15 kilometers away from the brewery, and that is somewhere that I do hope to go and check out for myself at some stage. But over the next few years, they apparently plan to open a new brewery, and they're currently working to produce some barrel-aged beers as well. And in late 2024, they opened a pop-up bar in the Azabudai Mall in Roppongi in Tokyo, and apparently it's been very popular, so I'm wondering if that's something that they're planning to continue on a more long-term basis. But as I mentioned earlier, the name Uchu Brewing literally translates into Japanese as space brewing, as in the big empty space up there, and most of their beers, or a number of their beers, are named after space phenomena, or interstellar objects, or whatever you like. They're named after space things, basically, because the brewery is called Uchu Brewing. But I have noticed in recent times their names have been becoming a little bit more diverse, if you like. But as of December 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 285 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and that number will no doubt continue to increase as time goes on. And like I mentioned to you, they are best known for the different kinds of IPAs, notably the New England Hazies, but yeah, there's quite a few sour beers and stouts and things like that coming out from these guys these days as well. I'm sure I had a Doppelbock, a smoked Doppelbock from them at some point as well. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Uchu Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So this one, as I mentioned to you earlier, comes in at 9.5% ABV. I think we have had a few triple IPAs that are heavier than this from Uchu in the past, and for me 9.5% is just a little bit below what I would consider a triple IPA. I would always say that the triple starts at 10% ABV, but that's just me. But this one apparently is hopped with Citra, Simcoe and Racal. We know all of these hops fairly well. Citra and Simcoe, of course, are from the US, Racal is from New Zealand. But Citra is 14% alpha acid. It's going to give you that lovely little bit of grapefruit, but also a lot of peach and mango and a bit of lemon lime in a New England IPA. Simcoe is going to give you that lovely soft passion fruit. It's a little bit lower at 12% alpha acid, whereas Racal is going to give you quite a lot of like apricot, and that's 10 to 11% alpha acid, and give you a wee bit of pineapple as well from what I remember. But yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. This one is a 350 milliliter can, incidentally, plain silver top on it there with a black background, and you can see it looks a little bit almost kind of Asgardian, almost, if you like. But yeah, I have to say, I do really like the artwork on this one, and Uchu Brewing certainly do some very interesting things in that regard as well. According to the sticker on the side, I paid 1,300 yen for this one, which is a wee bit pricier than some of the Uchu beers I've brought in the past, incidentally. But yeah, for Uchu and supporting these local craft beer businesses, I'm not that bothered. But yeah, you can see the Uchu Brewing symbol on the bottom of the can there, which is quite nice, and that gives you a little bit more of a kind of close-up of the artwork as well. But like I said, 9.5% New England Hazy Imperial Triple IPA. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. So here we are. been looking forward to this one since I bought it. Actually, it feels like a wee while since I've had a beer with Rakal in it. But yeah, there we go. We don't want to waste any of that Uchu goodness. And this beer, I think, is a fairly recent release as well. I think it was the start of December, if I'm not mistaken. It said on the side here. Yeah, this one's probably been packaged at the end of November by the looks of it. And yeah, batch number 1013 apparently, which is quite nice. But yeah, anyway, you can see this beer has poured really very nicely. A solid finger of a frothy, I would say slightly cream coloured head, almost perfect white. You can see some small bubbles just on the surface of the liquid there, but then yeah, the head gets a little bit more foamy the further up that you go. But in terms of the colour of this one, I would describe this as being a kind of deep mixed tropical juice yellow colour, this one. There are little bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass and a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look pretty nice, this one, I have to say that. But it's got a lovely kind of opacity to it as well. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few different things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well, although you don't really have to care about that all that often when it comes to different kinds of IPAs. But yeah, the level of opacity in this one is pretty damn thick, if you like. One of the soupier and gloopier New England IPAs that I've come across over the last little while. And remember, the level of haze in these beers is down to oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use as well. You can see the head on this one is just receding a little bit to leave a kind of nice thick ring around the edge of the glass. And yeah, you've got that lovely kind of foamy layer just sitting on top as well. But all in all, nothing particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So yeah, I think we can go on and have a little look at the aroma of this one then. So let's do it. Oh, that smells really nice. It's got a lovely fruity character to it, this one. Kind of oily, but just soft and juicy at the same time. And the malty backbone of this one is quite interesting as well, I have to say. Kind of soft and bready and oaty. And the green component's nice and soft as well, actually. Yeah, I think there was some incognito being used in this one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's a very soft and juicy smelling New England IPA, this one. But yeah, when it comes to New England IPAs, for me there are sort of 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of these beers. You get the sort of farmhousey, yeasty type character and the rye lean and grainy side of things. Those are a bit more common in New England brewed New England IPAs. The style's changed a little bit as it's moved further afield. But yeah, in a lot of New England IPAs, you have wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. For me, this beer is leaning more toward the kind of barley malt and oaty creamy side of things, actually. So that's quite interesting with this one. And yeah, this comes across as a very soft, juicy, and kind of oaty creamy New England IPA, which I have to say I do really quite like. Yeah, so the where do we start with this one then? A lot of like tropical fruit coming out of this one. It's not really citrusy, and I think that's helping this beer just be really soft and smooth, in all honesty. But let's start with the malty side of things and describe the aroma a bit more in depth for you, as we always do. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer is a lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust. There's a little element of kind of woody character in there, which I very often get, and a little bit of cracker. These are subtleties that are pretty much they're just part of the style, in honesty. But yeah, there's a teeny little bit of like a sweet brown bready character in there, but mainly with the malty side of things. I'm getting a lot of fluffy but quite dense and sweet white bread in there. Good little bit of wheaty character as well, like really quite dense actually, and very smooth, which makes me think, oh, maybe it's American wheat that's in here, or it could be Australian as well, I would guess, because if it was from Europe it would have a bit more kind of dryness to it. But yeah, for me the oaty character in this beer is really the thing that kind of comes to the fore. The oats are really thick and really kind of creamy in this one, and that makes me think maybe more European oats than American or Australian oats in this case. European oats are very kind of thick and creamy in my experience. The American oats are just that little bit drier and slightly more porridgey. But yeah, good little bit of oaty creaminess in here. The oats are starting to show a little bit of a drier side, because the beer has been in the can maybe about 4 or 5 weeks, something like that at the time of filming, I would guess. But yeah, as I've often said, oats can be quite an interesting measure of freshness when it comes to your IPAs. Essentially, the creamier they are, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. Very rough measure, of course, but that tends to be what you find. But lovely big creamy oaty character coming out of this one. There's a good little bit of sweetness to this one, but not overly much. A bit of that Werther's original butter candy, butterscotch, and a wee bit of biscuit in there. But yeah, overall, malty side of this one is very nice, but quite oaty leaning, I would say. The yeasty side of the beer for me is also quite interesting. The yeasty side of this one, it's got a good little bit of there's a little bit of brown bread in there, but also quite a little bit of white bread, and both of those elements are quite sweet. And yeah, that's quite interesting. The more that I smell of this beer, the sweeter the malt base gets. But let's round off the look at the aroma with a look at the green component and the fruity side of things then. So the green component for me is mainly quite oily and wet, if you like. So that, I'm pretty sure, is the result of Incognito. I think it was Citra Incognito that was in here, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, your green component, there's a teeny little bit of earthy herbal sort of thing, but that of course takes a back seat to the sort of floral and grassy side of the aroma. If you take the aroma in really deeply, you do get a nice little bit of that floral aromaticity. The grassiness is in there, obviously. I think the Citra is the one that's going to give you more grassiness, and it has that wee bit of zesty character to it as well. But yeah, all in all, it's really nice. The fruity side of things is kind of what you would expect if you know these hops. For me, the Citra's not really showing you its more kind of punchy side almost. It's actually showing you its softer side. So I'm getting a little bit of peach there in the top of the nose, but a lot of juicy mango, a lot of passion fruit, of course, as well. The passion fruit's going to mainly come from the Citra, but yeah, there's apricot in there, there's pineapple. The apricot, of course, can come from the Racao as well, and I think the or Racao, I should say. I enunciated that wrong, but yeah, lots of juicy pineapple-y notes in there as well. It's a very smooth, kind of tropical fruity note that comes out of this beer. So yeah, peach, mango, apricot, passion fruit, and a bit of pineapple. I think that describes pretty much everything that's going on in this one, and the more that you smell of this beer, the more the kind of creaminess of the oats start to pop their way out, if you like. So yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the aroma of this one. As I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time that we try this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Ancient Frost, a 9.5% New England Hazy, Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA from the wonderful Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture here in Japan. Let's try this. Slange, skål, cheers, kampai. Ooh, that's really nice. Yeah, this beer, it does have a wee bit more wheaty presence to it in comparison to the um yeah, it has a wee bit more wheaty presence to it in comparison to what I thought it would have from the aroma. But yeah, I think this one is really nice. It's a big thumbs up from me. Yeah. Um, a wee bit more bitter as well than I thought it would be, in honesty. But yeah, another lovely, lovely New England triple from these guys. The way it goes together is really good. So a big thumbs up again to Uchu for this beer. So let's have a little look at this beer a wee bit more in depth and just break down the flavour for you and describe it. So we'll start in the middle third of the palate as we always do. The backbone of the beer. You've got that lovely little bit of bread crusty character in there. For me, it's more of a kind of brown bready character that comes out of this one. So yeah, you get that nice little bit of like almost brown bready bread crust in the base of the beer. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get that wee touch of woodiness that always comes out. There's a wee bit of cracker above that as well. I'm actually getting quite a wee bit of brown bready character in the base of the beer as well, which is quite interesting. There is a wee touch of graininess. I've got an itchy nose. There's a wee bit of graininess coming out of this beer into the aftertaste as well, which is quite interesting. Above that, above the brown bready layer, you get the more sweet and smooth white bready layer from the barley malt, and it's got a degree of sweetness to it that as well. But then yeah, you've got that more dense wheaty character coming out of the beer. So yeah, that dense wheaty white bready note in there. Yeah, so lovely dense wheaty note in this one. So I've often said sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more kind of dry and bitter flavours come out further back. And with the wheat in this one, you can feel there is a difference there, because at the front, that dense white bready wheaty layer that you have on top of the barley malt layer, the wheat is smoother further forward on that middle third of your palate, but then it's more bitey further back. Above that, you get the oaty side of the beer, and the oats are a little bit drier as well, which is kind of interesting. So when you go down the middle line of your palate, you can feel that the oats are that little bit more kind of creamy, and as you move out toward the edges of your palate, you just get a little bit more of a kind of dryness out of the oats, which I think is kind of interesting. So yeah, a little bit of a dryness out of the oats there on the edge of your palate, but yeah, down the middle line you've got that nice creaminess, and I think the beer does sweeten up a little bit into the aftertaste, so you get more of the creamy oats, and in the dead centre of your palate there's a little circle there which has a wee bit of Werther's Original in there, so a little bit of a Werther's Originally kind of note. I don't think it's definitely not caramel, but that's the boozy side of the beer, and then around the edge of that you've got a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type character coming out of it. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, I don't know if there's really much else to say about the middle third of your palate. Then the only other thing I would add is that there's a wee bit of kind of more wheaty, bitey type character coming out of this one. So yeah, I think that covers the middle third of the palate. Let's go to the back third of your palate then. So as I've often said, the middle third and back third of your palate will share a lot of characteristics, except the back third of the palate, some of those layers will come out a little bit, more dry and a little bit taller and things like that. So yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty bitey character on top, and then yeah, you've got the base of that back third of your palate. You get a little bit more of the kind of grainy bread crust in there, a wee bit of the Jacob's cream cracker on top of that. Then there's the brown bready layer above that, which is a little bit lighter, taller and more airy. The white bready layer, which is above that, and you can feel that that's a little bit lighter, taller and more airy as well. Then you've got a more dense wheaty bready layer in there, which has that wee bit more kind of bitiness to it as well. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. But I think the more that you drink of this one, the more the wheat kind of smoothens out there. But above everything else, on that back third of the palate, you've got the yeasty side of things. So for me, in the yeasty side of things, at its core, you've got that kind of more dense and slightly sweet brown bready character there, but around that it becomes a little bit more grainy, and I think then around the very edge of it you've got a wee bit more of a kind of crackery sort of bread crusty type thing coming out of this one. So yeah, I think the way that that goes together is really quite nice in this one too. So yeah, back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But definitely the beer shows a little bit more wheaty character the more that you drink of it. But it does at the same time sweeten up a little bit into the aftertaste. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then. So green component for me, there's a wee bit of earthiness there in the back corners of the palate, and as you move further forward you can feel there's a wee bit of a kind of more dank piney resin in there, some nice floral aromaticity as well. Then round the front curve of the tongue there's just that little bit of a kind of lighter there's a little bit of that kind of lighter, more grassy sort of thing coming out of this one as well, but it's still got a wee bit of zestiness to it. And in honesty, the green component comes across as being quite oily in this case, and maybe that's down to the use of the Incognito, which is of course a hop oil product really. But let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things then, just to round off the flavour description for this beer. So yeah, border region between front and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the fluffy white bready character from the barley malt in the middle, and the more dense wheaty note on top. The base of that front third of your palate is of course the kind of fresh white bready bread crust, bit of cracker on top of that, then the brown bread, the white bread, and the more dense wheaty sort of note. The wheat is very smooth on that front third of your palate as well, but then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at that fruity side of things then. Yeah, fruity side of this beer is really very, very tropical leaning. I think the Citra does show a wee bit more of its citrusy side in the flavour than it does in the aroma. So there's little hints of that in there. So like if you go to the very back of that oily bubble there's a little touch of grapefruit that lingers into the aftertaste, and there's no other hop in here other than Citra can really give you that. As you move further forward though, you get the nice peachy notes, which I think you can get from both Rakau and Citra. So the peach is in there, there's passion fruit, big juicy mango in there, some apricot as well, and a sort of oily pineapple too. But I think as you move further forward on that front third of your palate, you get a little bit of more, you do get a little bit of that more sort of lemon limey character that Citra can give you at times. And yeah, I think the grapefruit from the Citra as well pushes its way out into the aftertaste too. So yeah, maybe a little bit more citrusy leaning into the aftertaste, but for the most part the fruity side of this beer is quite tropical. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about this beer from that perspective. But yeah, for me, it gets more wheaty and bitey, and it shows you a little bit more of a kind of floral spice and citrusy character into the aftertaste too. So that's definitely worth taking note of with this particular beer. But let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, the I would say this beer is maybe top end of mid-bodied, pushing bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation has a little bit of a prickle in this one. The beer still feels a little bit kind of clean and wet, which is something you'll find quite often with Japanese beers. Quite often they're very packed with flavour, but the Japanese view beers as something that should be light and drinkable. So you have what I call the Japanese cleanliness. This beer is very easy to drink when you consider what it is, and you will find that with quite a few big Japanese beers, in fact. So quite wet and quite clean at the same time, and it does show you a wee bit of that kind of creamy character as well. IBU wise, I think this one's maybe about 50 IBUs. It gives you a little bit of bitterness into the aftertaste, a wee bit of floral and piney character coming out of it. The malt base is a wee bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, and kind of more creamy and very slightly sweet on top. Then yeah, the fruity side of things is quite interesting too. Very tropical and juicy for the most part, but into the aftertaste you get a bit of grapefruit and a sort of lemon limey character, mostly from the Citra, I would say too. But yeah, overall another very, very nice beer from Uchu Brewing. A very solid New England triple IPA. This one really wheaty leaning, the more that I think about it. But yeah, absolutely worth trying if you come across it. And you know, I enjoy the Uchu Brewing beers. It's always nice to review these for you. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this was the winter ancient. I kept wanting to say winter frost with this. The Ancient Frost, a 9.5% New England hazy Imperial Triple IPA from the wonderful Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture to the west of Tokyo here in Japan. Yeah, really nice to try this one for you, and I hope you guys enjoyed my take on this one. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Uchu Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, check out my social media, check out Uchu's social media, do check out my friend Neva over at Japanese Craft Beer Reviews as well. And I will catch you guys again in another review very, very shortly. Until then, slàinte, skål, cheers, and kanpai.